Today's case is being narrated by one of my favourite channels, History Profiles, and I have left a link to his channel below. But now, let History Profiles take you to 19th century USA.
Jenny Cramer was born in the spring of 1860 in the city of New Haven in Connecticut. She was one of 3 children, born to Mr. Jacob and Mrs. Christina Cramer, a hard-working couple who owned a local cigar store. As a child, Jenny was somewhat indulged by her parents, and although she went to school, she left when she was 15 years old. However, she did not do what many girls her age did in the mid-1870s and find work. Instead, she stayed at home with her parents. She had grown up to be a very attractive young lady and always made sure that whenever she went out, she looked her best. Jenny's mother was aware that her daughter attracted the attention of many gentlemen and tried to control who she was seen out with. She knew that a young lady's reputation could be quickly ruined, and she was not going to let that happen to her beautiful daughter, who locally was often referred to as the Belle of New Haven. Despite Mrs. Cramer's efforts, Jenny would go out as often as she was able. She very much enjoyed the attention that was bestowed upon her and was always keen to speak with all the young gentlemen who wanted to make her acquaintance. One of her many admirers was named James Malley Jr. He was the nephew of a wealthy gentleman named Mr. Edward Malley, who was the owner of a dry goods store. Jenny met James Malley in 1881 when she was 21 years old. Her parents' cigar shop was across the street from Malley's dry goods store, and soon after the first meeting, James became somewhat obsessed with her. He would write her little notes and have them delivered to the cigar shop, but Jenny did not seem very interested in the young gentleman. Although she did accept his request to accompany him on the occasional walk, she very much liked to go out and take advantage of the long summer evenings. However, Miss Jenny Cramer would not go out with James Malley alone. In order to satisfy her and her mother's wishes, they were always accompanied by James Malley's cousin named Walter Malley. He was the son of the owner of the dry goods store, the wealthy Mr. Edward Malley. He was a quiet and unassuming young man who, after attending a prestigious school, went on to the university at Yale, although he failed to complete his studies. A young lady named Blanche Douglas would also be in attendance. James and Walter told Jenny that they had met Blanche in New York. They said she was from a wealthy Long Island family and that she would soon be engaged to Walter. It soon became apparent that James was becoming more besotted with Miss Cramer. He was 23 years old and a high-spirited young man. Everyone in New Haven knew that the Malleys were a wealthy family, but Jenny was not about to commit herself to James. Her reputation had never been questioned, and she was aware that her looks should be able to secure her a good husband from an affluent and influential family. On the 23rd of July, 1881, Jenny again went out with James, Walter, and Blanche. It was a very warm evening, and she did not return home until the early hours of the morning. Her mother was most displeased and reminded her daughter that it was very inappropriate for a young lady to return at that hour, and that she should be careful not to do anything that could undermine her reputation. Jenny told her mother that it was not her fault, as she had been invited to the Malleys' mansion and was unable to find a gentleman to escort her home. Mrs. Cramer thought that her daughter now understood that she should not put herself in such a position. However, less than 2 weeks later, on the 3rd of August, Jenny went out again and she did not return. Her mother was both worried and angry. She thought she had brought her daughter up well, but her behaviour was no longer befitting of a respectable young lady. Jenny returned in the morning of Thursday, the 4th of August. She was accompanied by Blanche, who told Mrs. Cramer that she had been with Jenny the previous evening and due to unfortunate circumstances, they had to seek shelter in a ladies-only lodging house. Mrs. Cramer was relieved that her Jenny was safe, but did not believe that she should be seen out in the company of Miss Douglas, who she did not feel was a worthy companion for her daughter. She again told Jenny that her behaviour was unacceptable, and she did not want her to set a bad example to her sister, who would soon be coming home. Mrs. Cramer was quite emotional and said that if she was unable to change her ways, she would have to find somewhere else to live. She then left the room. When she returned, her daughter and Miss Douglas had gone. Early in the morning, on Saturday the 6th of August, a local oysterman named Asael Curtis was preparing his boat when he saw something lying in the shallows. The waves were breaking over it, so he went out to take a closer look. He discovered that in front of him was the body of a young lady. She was wearing a white dress. He picked her up and carried her to the shore. He then contacted the authorities. As people came to the beach, the police were informed that the deceased looked very much like Miss Jenny Cramer, the Belle of New Haven. The police presumed that the young lady had drowned, possibly wanting to take her own life. They thought that she may have been unmarried and with child, so in despair, entered the water. The body was taken to a boathouse, and 2 doctors were summoned to determine the cause of death. They had their reservations that she had drowned. An autopsy was later conducted, which concluded that as there was no water in the deceased's lungs or stomach, it was highly improbable that death was caused by drowning. A more sinister discovery was that it was apparent that the young lady had been subjected to a physical attack, which had left her without her virtue. The body had been found close to the Savin Rock amusement park, which was a popular place for people to visit. When the police started to make inquiries, witnesses told them that in the evening of Friday the 5th of August, they had seen a young lady who they believed to be Miss Jenny Cramer with a gentleman who had a moustache. Eventually, their inquiries led the police to Mr. James Malley, his cousin Mr. Walter Malley, and their friend Miss Blanche Douglas. The trio told the police that they had been in the company of Miss Cramer on Wednesday, the 3rd of August, but had not seen her since Thursday morning. During this time, Mr. Edward Malley was away on business. He returned to find his son and nephew had been interviewed by the authorities. Concerned, he hired a team of lawyers and private detectives. Rumours then emerged that witnesses were being paid to change their stories. Witnesses who had said they had seen James, Walter and Blanche with Miss Cramer on Friday the 5th of August suddenly became less sure that they had actually seen them. An inquest was held. Miss Blanche Douglas told how she had been with Jenny, Walter and James on Wednesday the 3rd of August at the Malley mansion. She said that she started to feel unwell, so instead of returning to her lodging house, she stayed in the Malley mansion in the same room as Miss Cramer. Following her testimony, Miss Blanche Douglas decided to return to New York. The police, however, believed she knew more than what had happened to Miss Cramer than she had disclosed, so they travelled to New York to interview her further. They were surprised to discover that she did not live in the address she had given the court, and she actually worked in a brothel. When they traced her, she told them that she had met James and Walter Malley when they had visited the establishment earlier that year. The detectives also discovered that her name was not actually Blanche Douglas, it was Anna Kearns. She said that she had previously been married and her husband had proved to be an abusive man, so she had left him and, in an attempt to remain inconspicuous, changed her name. She went on to say that after she had met Walter, he had become somewhat infatuated by her and started to send her love notes, before eventually inviting her to his father's mansion in New Haven. It was then that she met Miss Cramer. The police reminded Miss Douglas that the Malleys were a very wealthy family who had the financial means to contract the best legal team in Connecticut. They told her that she should cooperate with them, and that if she did not tell them what had happened to Miss Cramer, she may be considered a suspect in a murder. Blanche decided that it would be in her best interest to tell the detectives everything she knew. She said the night in July, when Jenny had not returned home until the early hours, they had been at a restaurant, which also had accommodation. She had gone to a room with Walter, while James tried to get Jenny to go with him to another room. She could hear Miss Cramer shouting, "Don't! Don't!" On the evening of Wednesday, the 3rd of August, they were again all together, but this time at the Malleys' mansion, where they had been drinking. Blanche said that James was very keen on Miss Cramer and asked her and Walter to assist him into getting her to spend the night with him. She added that Mr. Edward Malley was away and they had the property to themselves. Blanche said that she went to a room with Walter and James took Miss Cramer to another room. Miss Cramer, however, did not go willingly, and Miss Douglas said that she heard her screaming. She also said that when she returned to New York, 2 gentlemen, one who she believed to be the brother of Mr. Edward Malley, visited her and offered to pay for her travel to Europe until this whole business had ended. When she was asked if she had seen Miss Cramer after Thursday, the 4th of August, she replied that she had not. She was arrested and charged with perjury. In another strange turn of events, chemical analysis on Miss Cramer's organs revealed traces of arsenic. Some young ladies at the time were known to ingest arsenic and rub it on their face, as they believed that it improved their complexion. However, there was too much arsenic found for this to be the case. Indications showed that a far larger amount must have been ingested prior to her death. On the 15th of August, James and Walter Malley were arrested for the murder of Miss Jenny Cramer. While awaiting trial, Mr. Walter Malley composed a waltz called Under the Elms, which was later published and sold as a music sheet. The trial was set for the 25th of April, and all 3 defendants had the charges against them consolidated to first-degree murder. Jury selection, however, proved difficult, as it seemed that everyone in New Haven was aware of the case and had already formed their own opinion on whether or not the accused were guilty or innocent. It was agreed that the body should be exhumed so a complete autopsy could be undertaken to determine exactly how much arsenic was ingested. The defense claimed that Jenny was like many other young ladies in the latter part of the 19th century and swallowed small amounts of the substance and rubbed it on their face in order to improve their complexion. The second autopsy found very little arsenic in her bones, which discounted the defense's theory. The newspapers reported daily on the case. The son and nephew of one of the richest families in the area, who had been accused of murder, along with their lady friend, who they met in a brothel, was a story that fascinated the public. A booklet describing the case was published and had to be reprinted when all the copies were sold. It was believed, however, that the Malley family had purchased most of them. All 3 defendants pleaded not guilty and said that they had not seen Miss Cramer after Thursday, the 4th of August. Prosecution witnesses who had told the police, and in some cases testified at the inquest, that they had seen James and Walter Malley along with Blanche Douglas with Miss Cramer on Thursday, the 4th, and Friday, the 5th of August, suddenly believed that they may have been mistaken. A lady who lived near Eliot House told the court that she had seen all 3 defendants along with Miss Cramer on the Thursday. Another witness said he had seen both Miss Douglas and Miss Cramer taking refreshment together on the Thursday evening. The defense called their own medical expert to the witness stand. He tried to discredit the autopsy report. He disputed the findings that she had been assaulted prior to her death and said the amount of arsenic found would indicate that she used it rather more often than had been suggested. The defense attorney said that it could not be ruled out that Miss Cramer had taken her own life, and that amongst all the scientific evidence that had been presented, the possibility that she may have simply drowned was very much overlooked. They also stated that if she had died from arsenic poisoning, no evidence had been presented that would suggest that the defendants had given it to her. On the 30th of June, 1882, the jury was sent out to deliberate. The judge instructed them that they must decide whether James Malley, Walter Malley, and Blanche Douglas had killed Miss Jenny Cramer by poisoning her with arsenic. He reiterated to them the defendants were not on trial for anything else. With the witness testimonies being somewhat contradictory and much of the evidence being circumstantial, it took the jury just 1 hour to return a verdict of not guilty. Miss Jenny Cramer's father, Mr. Jacob Cramer, was traumatized by the loss of his daughter. He was so aggrieved by what he considered a failure of the justice system. He took his own life before the trial had actually ended. The loss also had a devastating effect on his wife Christina, so much that she took her own life by hanging in July 1891. Following the trial, the Malleys remained largely unaffected. They threw a large party to celebrate the verdict, which was widely criticised by the press and the public. It seemed that many in New Haven believed that James and Walter had gotten away with murder, but despite this, Mr. Edward Malley's business continued to do well. It eventually closed for business 100 years later in 1980. Walter Malley and Blanche Douglas stayed in contact. Eventually, he married a lady named Anna Madden, who many people believe to have been Blanche Douglas. The circumstances that led to the death of the beautiful Jenny Cramer were never resolved, and to this day, the manner in which she met her death have never been determined. I would like to say a big thank you to Briefcase for letting me narrate this historical crime on his channel. My channel is called History Profiles, and it would be great if you could check it out. There's a link below, and don't worry, Briefcase will be back next week.